From being a beloved childhood game to earning the reputation as one of the most disliked games, the narrative sets the stage for an exploration into the factors influencing this dramatic shift. Comparing and contrasting Pixel Gun 3D's early popularity that attracted a sizable player base, but it also highlights the following collapse, highlighting the significant reduction in the daily player count over time. This establishes the framework for a detailed examination of Pixel Gun 3D's development. 2013 saw a significant shift in the gaming environment with a rise in popularity of games like Counter-Strike and Minecraft. These games, which were mostly available on PCs, were aimed at an older demographic and carved out a space for themselves in the gaming world. In this situation, Alex Krasno saw a special chance. Seeing how well the PC version of the idea, which combined Counter-Strike and Minecraft, worked, he thought it would be great to bring that kind of experience to mobile devices. This awareness resulted from an obvious market gap since no other mobile game replicated this hybrid approach. Pixel Gun 3D was a first failure, even with the clever placement of CSGO and Minecraft features and the effort to include a plot. The game didn't live up to the hype, mostly because it was too easy and didn't have any repeat value. This crucial stage prepared the way for Pixel Gun 3D's further development. When the multiplayer function was included in Update 1.2, Pixel Gun 3D underwent a radical change. With this version, the dynamics of the game underwent a significant change, overcoming its early difficulties in drawing players in by allowing them to interact with one another in a multiplayer environment. This multiplayer upgrade had an instantaneous and significant effect, which caused Pixel Gun 3D's popularity to soar. The number of players increased dramatically, showing an astounding rise from a low number to more than 10,000 per day. This spike demonstrated how important it is to have a competitive element in the game. In addition to increasing the player base, the multiplayer upgrade helped Pixel Gun 3D's thriving community to develop naturally. During this time, famous maps like Heavenly Garden and Pool Party were unveiled, which added to the game's allure and personality. In addition to bringing the player base back to life, the multiplayer function established the groundwork for a more active and competitive community. The makers of Pixel Gun 3D carefully reacted to the game's exponential development with upgrades like 0.89 and 0.92. These improvements were designed with a growing player base in mind, taking into account the changing demands and community expectations. Notably, these upgrades included important new features to the gameplay, such as the game modes for the Hunger Games in 0.92 and Capture the Flag in 0.89. The addition of these additional modes to Pixel Gun 3D increased its overall appeal and encouraged player involvement by adding levels of complexity, diversity, and excitement. Another significant development in Pixel Gun 3D was the addition of clans. During a period of rapid expansion, this feature made community formation easier. Clans developed into a vital component of the game's community, encouraging player companionship, rivalry, and a feeling of inclusion. These upgrades improved the overall player experience while maintaining the flow of the game. As the game became more and more successful, the creators decided to change the way they generated money by allowing players to buy coins in-game. This was a change from the previous cosmetic-only purchases, since it allowed users to purchase in-game things using virtual currency that they bought with real money. The player base initially accepted this change since the goods that could be bought were mostly decorative and had little impact on gameplay. The game's balance was not instantly upset by this subtly integrated commercial, which seemed fair. Content producers like Exotic Gaming and Esoteric Einer joined the scene as Pixel Gun 3D gained prominence. The game was the ideal topic for videos because of its replayability and fun factor as well as its growing popularity. The game's popularity was further boosted by this increase in content production, which unintentionally helped the new revenue model succeed. With more than 50 million gamers, Pixel Gun 3D achieved its zenith of popularity, with a massive following, devoted players, and influential content producers who helped highlight the game's attractiveness to a wider audience. The game was a giant in the mobile gaming market. But in the midst of its heyday, the game started to have problems with content stagnation. There weren't many big upgrades for Pixel Gun 3D, even with its user base constantly expanding. The total material available to gamers stagnated during this time, deviating from the preceding pattern of significant additions and upgrades. As such, the player base and content developers were directly impacted by this dearth of new material. Expert gamers were disinterested, and content producers struggled to come up with fresh, interesting content. The ensuing changes in Pixel Gun 3D's course were made possible by the pressure that the once thriving ecology began to display. With Update 11.0, the Duels game mode was added by the creators in an attempt to breathe new life into the gaming experience. With the help of this update, Pixel Gun 3D will now have a new fundamental feature that offers players a fun and different way to play. Nevertheless, there were unexpected effects from the Duels mode's adoption. In contrast to the earlier free-for-all mode, Duels unintentionally widened the skill difference by putting players in one-on-one situations on similar terrain. Concerns were voiced since this change made gaming less varied and more skill-centric, which would exclude some players. Developers recognized the new problems and made an effort to solve them by putting in place talent-matching algorithms. This change was made with the intention of improving fair competition and leveling the playing field in the Duels mode. The dynamics of the game and the player experience were still being impacted by the update's unforeseen repercussions in spite of these attempts. After the release of the Duels update, Pixel Gun 3D had a downturn characterized by an abundance of powerful and innovative weaponry. Ironically, the introduction of these weapons, which were first meant to level the playing field for less experienced players, led to an increase in the purchases of them by more experienced players, aggravating the disparity and undermining the fair competition that the game creators had aimed for. The developers' apparent emphasis changed from making significant improvements to pursuing money-generating further exacerbated this downturn. The creation of updates that may really improve the game's overall quality and user pleasure was subordinated to the regular inclusion of new weapons, which became the main tactic for financial gain. As such, this strategy negatively affected the gaming experience. Veteran players discovered that their hard-won and treasured weapons were useless against the flood of powerful new substitutes. A pivotal stage in Pixel Gun 3D's demise was indicated by the exit of frustrated players who were unhappy with the change to a pay-to-win model. Seeing users' rising dissatisfaction, developers made adjustments to try to save Pixel Gun 3D in order to alleviate the growing skill gap and promote a more equal and pleasurable gameplay environment. These upgrades included modifications to the clan structure and skill matching mechanisms. The creators took immediate action to save themselves, even going so far as to completely remove the Duels option. Other changes were made in response to this decision, demonstrating an understanding of the unforeseen repercussions of the Duels update and a desire to address the problems that had emerged. The player base reacted negatively to the modifications, despite these efforts to save the game. Rather than assuaging apprehensions, several modifications exacerbated dissatisfaction, leading to an ongoing reduction in player satisfaction. The difficulties in Pixel Gun 3D persisted as the game tried to reclaim its previous brilliance, seemingly trapped in a never-ending cycle of attempted fixes and setbacks. Pixel Gun 3D's present condition is marked by a dearth of innovation, as the game's creators seem to be clinging to outdated elements that formerly defined the game's popularity. Both seasoned gamers and more recent ones have expressed a feeling of staleness as a result of this resistance to try new things and change the gameplay. The choice to remove around 70% of the original maps and stuff, which the player base still finds perplexing, exacerbates the problem. Rather than bringing new life to the game experience, this content reduction has made Pixel Gun 3D seem less nostalgic and less connected to the things that formerly set it apart. The game's present status is further tarnished by a hacker infestation and a discernible drop in active players. A mixture of younger gamers and devoted tryhards have replaced the previously vibrant community, creating a dispersed player base. The constant pop-ups pushing for in-game purchases add even more to the disorganized and disappointing experience, which is much different from the game's first heyday of popularity. Looking back, Pixel Gun 3D has had an incredible journey, starting as a promising mobile game and reaching its peak popularity with millions of players. But a number of choices tainted this trend, changing the game's direction and bringing it to its present state of collapse. A number of important causes, such as a lack of innovation, the use of a dubious monetization approach, and the inability to consistently provide significant updates, are responsible for the downfall. All of these factors combine to diminish the number of players, degrade the gaming experience, and indicate that the game's once high regard has changed.